Hi kittens, I'm Julie Savone, psychedelic facilitator, integration expert, and your guide for this wild ride, The Inner Trip, 365 days with plant medicine. I've helped hundreds of people use plant medicine, primarily psilocybin, to heal, expand, and step into their next level. But this year, I'm taking it even deeper. For the next 365 days, I'm bringing you with me. I'll be microdosing, journeying, integrating, and exploring what it really means to live a limitless life, with plant medicine as a tool, not a crutch. So if you're ready to feel more alive, more clear, more limitless, and you're down to do it with mushrooms and a little bit of sass, you're in the right place. Let's take the inner trip. Welcome back to the inner trip. Today, my intention is to answer one of the most common questions I receive from people, especially when I tell them that microdosing is something that is subperceptual. So they ask me about microdosing, and I'll explain that a true microdose is something that does not alter your ability to be responsive in a situation, right? Something where you could operate heavy machinery, drive a car, make dinner, pick up your kids, enter a client meeting, treat patients. And they tell me, okay, so if I'm hearing you right and it's really subperceptual, then how do I know if microdosing is actually working? And that's a fair question. I think if you take an Advil and you still have a headache, you might think, hey, this isn't working for me. Or if you take an antibiotic and your infection doesn't clear up, you might think, hey, this isn't working for me. So if something exists below the realm of altering your perception, altering your ability to, or your set point for how you move about the world and interact with things, right? If you're going to feel it less than you drink a glass of wine, or you take a Benadryl, or you were to, have a cannabis gummy, then how in the heckaroonie do you actually know that it's working? So to answer that question today, I want to talk about a few things. I want to talk about some overall themes that people notice and report that lets them know, or reminds them really, that they're having an on day, right? Like they microdose that day. And then I want to go into, I have a whole folder on my phone of screenshots that I've saved of people's messages that they sent me, right? And so I'm going to go through really organically and just look at different messages and share some of the things that people have sent me. And although these things might not be something as dramatic as, I suddenly cleared up my staph infection or something, they are things that are really dramatic and powerful for them. And I will say the results of microdosing really compound over time, which is another reason you'll hear, I don't like to ever be hyperbolic, but I would say all facilitators talk about the importance of following a protocol, which is a set of on and off days that you follow for an overarching period of time, whether that be 30, 60, some might even say 90 days. So these are really effects that compound, which is why I also say, you might microdose on a one-off and have a really good day, good time that day, but you're not necessarily going to change the overall quality and set point homeostasis of your life, because those effects come from the compounding impact of microdosing following protocol plus integrating, so that you can, something that I come back to time and time again, pull the thread, right? You can pull the thread from your on days into your off days. You can bring the magic of mushrooms into your everyday normal, so that that actually changes the quality of your life overall. So let's get into it. How do you know if you are microdosing correctly, or microdosing is working, or that something is actually happening? Microdosing shifts are often subtle. It isn't this big wham bam thank you ma'am, like you might think with a traditional full psychedelic experience, like, oh my god, the wall is melting. Or even when you have a few drinks and you can tell, oh yeah, like I got a good buzz going, I'm not in my head, I'm laughing, like I'm feeling a little less contracted, right? All signs that, like the alcohol is quote unquote working. So when you're microdosing, some things you can notice are a shift in your mood or perspective. A lot of people report a positive uptick in their baseline emotions. And when we think about perspective shifts, this might be giving someone the benefit of the doubt. One thing that I hear all the time, everyone says it to me, I don't know if we just have a country full of road ragers, because I do primarily work with people in the United States, but they'll tell me normally in traffic, I'm really irritated and aggressive and angry, like when I get cut off, but I could get cut off in traffic, and instead of flipping them the bird, I'm like, all right, babe, like you must have needed to get there wherever you're going quickly. So that's a huge one that I hear. Another one is an uptick in creativity, an uptick in curiosity, an uptick in your desire to explore. And this could be curiosity with a topic, so maybe you're more interested in learning, but this might be curiosity in interpersonal relationships. So it can breed a lot of closeness with you and friends or partners or family. And it might also help you, I like to say, enter like third party awareness within yourself. So normally what happens is someone has a thought and they identify with the thought. So I'll just run through an example like, oh my God, why did I say that at the checkout? I'm so freaking awkward. She must have thought I was so weird, right? And we just get really stuck in this like dialogue within ourselves of taking things at face value and assuming a certain level of rightness or truth in what ourselves are saying to us. Versus with a microdosing day, you might be able to take a third party perspective and step back and be like, okay, like let's just hold on for a second. You know, it's almost like the objective witness in the conversation. Like maybe you were a little awkward, maybe that was an odd thing to say, but like this girl probably sees 100 people in a day. She's not still thinking about you. Why are you still thinking about her? You're also probably never going to see her again, and it's fine. Like no harm, no foul. We can let this go, right? So it's the part of you, like a higher self perspective that comes in that might not always be available to you or present in your conversations. And then, you know, something that also comes up for a lot of people is feeling and accessing their emotions more clearly. And sometimes this is the difficult emotions, right? Sometimes this is anxiety. Sometimes this is sadness. Sometimes this is a grief you haven't let yourself experience. And so I oftentimes have people come and tell me like microdosing isn't working for me. Actually, it's having the opposite effect. And I'm like, well, that might be the opposite of what you wanted it to do. But I remind them the only way out is through. So you're thinking it's not working because it's bringing more things to the surface. I say it is working because until you bring them to the surface and deal with them, they're not going to go away. And that's ultimately what you want, right? Both people, in these situations, both me and whoever I'm talking to are on the same page of what they really want is for the tough emotion to be gone, right? They think, though, they can just bypass it and that the psilocybin, the mushrooms, was just going to allow them to bypass it entirely. I know that the mushrooms bring whatever is ready to the surface to be looked at, to be dealt with, so that they can really move through it and finally let it go. So again, we both are clear on what we want the end point to be, but there's a difference in the way we think we can get there. And I've never met someone who could actually get there by just avoiding it. At least not without some serious consequences. So there's that. Those are, in general, you know, some big things that come up for people that kind of let them know you know, it's working or it's really an on day. I'll also say in general, I have this feeling of, I call it a sparkle. So it's not that anything changes. It's not that you see a caterpillar smoking hookah. It's not that the walls are bleeding or melting or anything else. It's that you walk outside and you notice things that have always been there, but for which you didn't have the same level of appreciation and attention. So this might look like taking a walk in your neighborhood as you always do, but noticing someone's garden along the way and really stopping to appreciate the garden and see it with sort of, I call it, fresh eyes. So like, let's imagine, you know, your Drew Barrymore in 50 First Dates. Every single day she wakes up and the experience is totally new to her. She doesn't have the context of continuation that most people do, right? And so she is seeing everything with fresh eyes day in, day out, except for whatever she had experienced before her memory loss, right? So this is the same thing that's happening with microdosing. It's Windexing your little eyeballs so that you can see things with a greater sense of awe and appreciation and wonder. Awe, wonder, these are two really powerful emotions humans can experience that promote a lot of good feeling. And so having that sparkle, just seeing things with a different sense of awe, appreciation, gratitude, and wonder is going to fuel overall positive feelings. So that's another great indicator that microdosing is working. So now I want to switch over and just go through some of my messages with you. Again, this is purely spontaneous. These are real text messages or, testimonials, things people have sent me after microdosing. So let's get into them together. And we're going to start with, one thing I guess I'll also say that people mention even before we fully get into it is that there's just a sense of ease, things that felt really hard no longer feel that hard. So maybe you had a lot of resistance to sitting down and starting your work day. Maybe you have a lot of resistance to cleaning up the house. That's a huge one that people mentioned to me. It's I had a really hard time taking care of my home, or I had a hard time wanting to take care of myself. That could mean cooking, a nutritious meal. That could mean going to the gym. I think a lot of people that are drawn to me, I'm drawn to them, are workaholics. And so they function really well within the context of their business or their job. And then they don't have a lot left to give back to themselves, whether that looks like home maintenance, etc. So having that is huge. And that's something that I hear reported quite a bit. All right. Okay, so kind of what we're talking about before, but more emotional awareness to all emotions, but then also a greater ability to interact in a safe way with the heavier emotions. So I've talked about this before. I like to say that psilocybin psychedelics give you a bubble of response or a bubble of interaction and safety between you and a big emotion. So maybe someone doesn't want to look at their anger because they feel like once they start to get angry, then it's off to the races and they have no control over it. Okay, so you're microdosing and maybe something makes you angry, but instead of feeling like the anger has bear hugged you, you now can stand there and look at the anger, standing a few feet away from it, and decide how much of your attention and energy do you want to give to the anger and what do you want to do with it instead. So that's a big thing that I hear quite a bit. Another one, so I'm reading a text right now. This woman said someone texted me something last night that would normally put me into a space of anxiety and I would spiral, and I would have also held it in and never expressed how that made me feel. Instead, I took a few deep breaths, spoke exactly how it made me feel, acknowledged parts of the conversation, and asked for space from communication with this person. So it's just a different way of interacting, right? It allows you a different operating system. I always like to say it makes you more responsive and less reactive. So this is a great example of that, right? This could show up in a lot of different situations, but her natural reaction would be to be anxious, would be to spiral and to internalize. What she expressed instead was that she was able to stay grounded and express communication back, not internalize, and to not overthink it as well. So that's a huge one that I hear quite a bit. Oh, this is a great text from someone. She said, microdosing has been a subtly, that's an odd little word, transformative experience. The shifts were natural, and I found that I am not only able to have a deeper gratitude and insight for experiences and my life, but I also have a more objective perspective. So this is kind of what I was talking about, to be the third-party neutral witness in your mind. She also said, life isn't happening to me anymore. I am excited to continue this journey. I noticed that I have not felt as many highs and lows and have been much more level emotionally. That's a great one as well. So a lot of people experience really high crests and peaks in their emotions, and what microdosing can do, although more emotions might be coming to the surface and you might be noticing more, acknowledging more, instead of it being high highs like a roller coaster or low lows, it becomes more of a subtle wave, and that can be really powerful. Anxiety, generally day-to-day anxiety goes down a lot with microdosing. That's something that I hear. So this woman said, anxiety, I notice my anxiety is a lot lower and I have an immense sense of peace and calm, but it's also accompanied by personal drive. So oftentimes what people, you might think that it's an oxymoron, right? How could you feel like driven and peaceful? But what a lot of people find is that the peace that comes from a decrease in anxiety is accompanied by a greater space to have the drive. So the anxiety was taking up so much energy that it might have quelled someone's personal drive, their desire to pursue their own goals. So even though they might be feeling a greater sense of peace, and peace might be associated with, I don't know, calm, laziness, anything else, it actually opens up a ton of space for people to feel motivated. Okay, ease, yep, clarity, something I hear about before or hear about a lot. Oh, so this is great. This is a text in response to someone who was sharing with me that they felt more anxious. And she said in response to what I had shared with you just a few minutes ago, I figured this was probably normal, but wanted to check in with you. I will definitely keep going, and I'm excited for the next few weeks. That's interesting about the anxiety, as I was thinking more of a side effect and not considering what it was bringing up for me. I'm loving this guide so far, and even just 2 days of exercises and journaling has been amazing. So that's really a big reason too why, people say, can I just do this on my own? Yeah, you could do the research, you could figure out the dosage and the protocol, and you could set yourself up in that way. But having that is really just like, it's why I always tell people, they ask me, how much do you take? And what protocol are you following? And I had this on an episode maybe a couple months ago. I'm happy to tell you that. I'm not currently microdosing. I'm going to start an LSD protocol soon. Happy to tell you my dosage and what schedule I'm following. But the money is in the things that I do with it. It's in the processes I take myself through. So let's go through 3 more. Another sense of gratitude for the small things. This woman says, again, with this third-party witness idea, I am able to identify my patterns, and it's helped me move through difficult emotions with more self-kindness, because my default is not to shame myself in those moments anymore, but to soothe myself. Oh, a different message, but my next one. I've already moved through a lot of stuff in regard to who I am and how I show up, and I have so much more acceptance for myself. Okay, we're gonna end with one of my clients who I screenshotted her post. She's so in love with microdosing that she made a whole post about it, and she goes, "These are the benefits I've received from my journey." Obviously, I had to screenshot that post. So you know what? Let's go into all of these, and these are all ways that she knew microdosing was working for her. This is a great way to wrap up the episode. 1, less anxiety. 2, less losing my shit during the overwhelming moments. She is a mom of 2 little boys. 3, more energy for the things that matter while also crushing my daily tasks, household and otherwise. 4, more quality time in play mode with my boys, and more venturing out by myself with them both. This was a huge one for her. She felt like she was a bad mom because she felt so overwhelmed when she tried to take the boys out by herself without her husband. Oh my gosh, that really held her up. It really held her back. And then she went on this whole solo, multiple hour, I want to say like 8-hour car drive by herself with her boys. She's like, I never would have done this before. So confidence is also a big one. Next, more creativity. Next, more fun and play with my girlfriends and making time for me without the guilt. This is the third-party witness, right? Without the guilt. More joy and less overwhelming during this holiday season. Things are so much better this year, and I don't feel that holiday depression that I was experiencing. Of course, I still miss, so she went in to say she had lost a family member, and that was why the holidays were really hard for her. But this year it feels easier, lighter, and I know he's always with us in spirit. Next, successfully hosted 13 people in our home for Thanksgiving and had 0 freak-out moments. It was amazing having our family here, and I'm just so grateful to be in a home that can hold us all. Let's see. And finally, a lot more connection in my marriage that has led to such a beautiful and passionate vibe together. I'm in love all over again, and it feels so amazing. Couldn't have planned to end on a better message, but I felt like that was pretty good. Right? So I get it. People are oftentimes looking, especially like in today's society, for a big blockbuster moment of like, this is how I know that I'm microdosed, or I've even heard people say like, I've never smoked a cigarette. personally. But people say like you take a drag and it's like this immediate like, oh my God, right? Like maybe it's like an orgasm, I don't know. Or like, that's such a great example, right? People have sex to produce an orgasm, right? We're the old dolphins. We're one of the only species that recreationally procreate. I guess we're not procreating. Recreationally gets into intercourse, okay? And you do it for the orgasm. People are always looking for this big like, ba-boom. Microdosing isn't that. Microdosing isn't that, but microdosing has some pretty amazing benefits in the long term, and it is a subtle experience. It is more of a compounding experience. So if you've ever wondered, what the heck is microdosing actually gonna feel like? How do I know it's working? Or Julie, if you keep yapping about how it's not going to make you trip, or it's totally subperceptual, then why the heck-a-rooney would you do it? This is why. So I'm curious, for all of my microdosing cuties out there who have microdosed, I would love for you after this episode as your integration to think about what you have most gained from the process of microdosing, right? And it probably isn't some like, I had this crazy experience one day that was really intense. It probably is more, I noticed gradually over the course of my practice that I blah, blah, blah. So I'd love to know, and if you want to share it with me, I would love for you to drop it in my DMs. Always love to hear what microdosing has given people. And for my cuties who have not microdosed before, I would love to know what questions you have about microdosing. That could be your integration. I would love for you to drop them in my DMs. I'm so happy to answer them. Or it could just be about psychedelics in general. We don't have to speak specifically about microdosing, but I did want to answer that question. However, in the meantime, I hope you are having an awesome week, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye, cuties. That's the end of today's trip. But remember, the real magic has always been inside of you. If this episode landed, send it to a friend who's ready to step into their next level. And make sure you're following the show so you never miss a dose. I'll be back again soon with another day on the path to your most limitless life. And until then, trust yourself, follow your intuition, and keep asking, how good can it get?